Well, I have the great privilege of being with two friends, Anna Strong-Safford, whom I see all the time, fortunately.
Hey, Al.
Yeah. And Yosuke Tanaka,
Yes.
who is visiting from Japan, who is a friend of Modpo and who occasionally comes to the United States, to Philadelphia. And when he does, we make sure he comes into the studio so we can talk. Okay, so we're about to talk about Man on a Bridge.
Sure, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Ayukawa's wartime experience. In 1942, in October, he joins the East 7th Division of the Japanese Imperial Army, and he's sent to Sumatra. And according to the introduction of this book, maybe half of the Erechi poets died during the war, and those who survived did not describe themselves as surviving. They said that they failed to die, which is his phrase, I think.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Can you say something about failed to die? That's not the same as saying I survived.
No, it's like a survivor's guilt kind of feeling.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Failed to die. Survivor guilt.
So
yeah.
he has a very close friend, Morikawa Yoshinobu, who died by this war. And this is a very heavy, the burden to Ayukawa after the World War II.
And I believe he has one poem where he addresses him as M.
M,
Yeah.
M means Morikawa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Man on a Bridge, before I read it, will you say a word or two about what people are going to expect when they hear this poem, at least translated? What's the mood? Why did you choose it for us?
Yeah, so one reason is that I think that for getting Japanese poetry into these sort of multiple situation, perhaps some bridge between Japanese and American.
A bridge, as it were.
Yeah. So that's one meaning. Yeah, should be the good to start. And then we can go further in the future.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So you, as a Japanese poet, with having your English as a second language, you studied in Modpo, and you've been saying all along, and now we get to really do it, how interesting it would be to look at American-influenced modernism in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in English translations, so it's not perfect, but I see you have the Japanese original.
Sure.
So here I go. I'm going to read Man on a Bridge, the 1942 version.
Yes, please.
Man on a bridge, elbows resting on a high parapet, shadow against the clear sky. A black stream flows far beneath the weeping trees and endless roofs of a town made of stone. Can you truly feel the desperate advance of the ship's direction? It breaks through heavy, stagnant time, its oars hitting at vanity. Man on a bridge, watching fireworks, you came to this far bridge to look down on an image of yourself, throwing away the miserable walls and your sighs that flicker against useless paper. Birds, exhausted by artifice, turn away to their sad perches. On a faraway bridge, you look up at the midday fireworks. Man on a bridge, your spirit parched, the faces of your mother, father, friends too, away in the quiet ebb and flow of the sleeping waves. Is there any deeper life than this soft cave? Even when beautiful green nature calls to you from the grave, the river's surface refuses to move. Man dreaming on a bridge, will the day ever come when this mud-soiled stream will flow into the sea with a thunderclap, spilling out where the horizon joins the sky, when the bridge will drift out to sea and become a blue figure alive with motion, when it will be possible to cry out in a natural voice? Man on a bridge, with your earnest brow, you confirm that the footsteps surrounding your life disappear as you become the mist. What are you thinking at sunset? The 1,000 steps that come and go behind you are descending towards the same labyrinth. They're walking the stairs to oblivion, holding the wooden rail, listening to the swell of polluted water underground. Pick a moment when anger can be easily quelled, as if the means to cure only flesh existed in the world. Man on a bridge, eyes distant, nobody believed you would lie down trembling under the sunset sky, smiling forever at words blown on black water by the drifting wind. Away from the edge of that dim abyss, it's possible that people flow in time, unchanging like a narrow river. Man on a bridge, even if you reach an end, the pale river's silence trails after the sound of the clock, carving out your soul, making your body a shadow in a corridor of afternoon, preventing you from reaching your goal like a succession of doors. Why did it take you so long to remember that you yourself are one small room, that here and there are also just an illusion? Man on a bridge, at the end of beauty, no direction existed, no fireworks or dreams, no blowing wind, sustained by the dark blue, gazing at the other bank. You're still cold, aren't you, man on a bridge? Well, I know the two of you are going to have a lot to say about this. Can I just throw out something to start?
Sure.
The tone of this poem seems to me embodied in a number of lines, but particularly the image that the man on the bridge stands at the end of beauty. Can you each say something about that? What does it mean to... You'll have to explain why he's on a bridge, but man on a bridge at the end of beauty, no direction existed, no fireworks or dreams, no blowing wind. Anna, the end of beauty?
I guess I'm thinking about this relationship between these poets, the Arechi group poets, and the Eliot, the Wasteland poem that they're so interested in, as also that poem also signaling kind of an end of beauty, kind of an end of like sort of beautiful poetic language, or the sort of highly constructed maybe poems that sort of characterize that end of that Victorian era in Western poetry. And of course this, sort of First World War and now Second World War signaling this radical, we can't talk about beautiful things when there's this like destructive, terrible conflict, I guess, happening. So it seems to me that this bridge is kind of this in-between of looking back on what came before and looking ahead to what's to come, and really not liking what we have ahead of us.
So I think that it's very important that this poet is just in his real life facing the possibility of his own death by the war. So that at that situation he cannot think of the aesthetics or something. He just facing to the live death. So perhaps we cannot think about the beauty or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and the birds are exhausted by artifice. Even when beautiful green nature calls to you from the grave, the river's surface refuses to move. So nature seems to have stopped or ceased.
Mm-hmm. So everything is a sort of the nothing. But
There's a lot of negatives.
Negative. But I can also recall the last section of the Wasteland of the Eliot. Eliot himself wrote that the aim of this section by himself, and one of them was that the illusion of nothingness. So this was the final stage of the Grail quest, so that the night has been tested by this illusion of nothingness. So I guess that this sort of the nothingness is the Japanese old-fashioned vague culture that Ayukawa should overcome. So this is another point of view.
Wow. So are you saying that this is that the speaker of the poem, or sorry, not the speaker, the man being described by the speaker, is stuck? He cannot look back to the old forms, but he has no future necessarily because of the war. He's just, you're looking at me, and he's on a bridge. So Anna, who is this man on a bridge? Can you describe what you take this?
What I sort of
Is it like the speaker and the poet, or is this some more Proofrockian figure who's a lot less well off than the poet? Do you see any difference?
I don't know. It doesn't feel Proofrockian to me. It feels like, and I think there is a relationship between the poet and the speaker, because this man on a bridge goes through all these cubistic sort of iterations. Like, to me, the actual figure of the man feels somewhat stable. Like, I feel like it's the same man on the bridge, even though the setting around the bridge shifts a lot of different times. Like, we get the water in one time, we get the watching fireworks, we get paper, we have this mud-soiled stream, then there's the thunder. Like, the setting around this bridge is constantly sort of shifting and changing, but this one man, in my mind, the man is literally in the same spot the whole time, and everything around him is changing and shifting, and nature's going through various events, I guess. Sometimes it's a clear sky, sometimes it's a thunderclap. Sometimes the river is quiet, sometimes it's muddy.
So are you saying that instead of being a figure that wanders and shifts and changes meaning, which would be the natural thing you'd get in a repetitive, you said cubistic, you're saying that he's actually, he's a still point in the middle of all this stuff going on.
That's kind of how it feels to me. And there's this kind of in-betweenness of being on a bridge, and as we sort of already talked about, this feeling of looking back at a country that you no longer recognize and looking forward into a future that you're uncertain about, that might just include the end of your life because you're about to go off to war, to fight for a country that you don't. This is something that came up in the preface, right? The poet felt, he'd been called upon to fight for a country that he didn't want to fight for and that he didn't feel strongly about defending, which just puts you in a really strange place.
Why do people stay on bridges? He's about to go off to war. He stays on a bridge all day. Is he going to jump off? Is he contemplating suicide?
That's one possibility. Okay. He is thinking of his own suicide. It could be. So I don't think that this is in the midst of the ceremony, because he is alone.
Yeah.
There's no relationship, and he came here by his own the aim, will. Right. I mean, so that he didn't call here for some sort of ceremony, but although there could be some shrine or something, temple.
And then, of course, Anna, there's this modernist gesture, Eleotic gesture of looking down, expecting some kind of truth, and getting the image of himself, reflection.
Right.
Or maybe the reflection fails. Even when beautiful green nature calls to you from the grave, the river's surface refuses to move. So there's this interplay between seeing yourself, seeing beyond yourself, just looking. If he's not thinking about jumping off, he certainly is looking hard at that water a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it really seems like he's trying to get something from nature, right? Like he's trying to look to nature to give him some kind of maybe sense of like peace, or maybe look for some kind of renewal, or look for some sign that life will continue in a way that he, wants it to. And nature's not giving him anything. Nature's not giving him any sign that there's going to be any future or anything on the other side of this bridge once he gets there. If he even ends up crossing, I mean, he doesn't move at all.
Yeah, so
He's still on a bridge. He's still cold at the end of the poem. He doesn't go anywhere.
Let's each pick a line or two or a passage that we want to talk about because we didn't get a chance to yet. So who wants to start? Yuska, do you have a line or a passage that you want us to focus on?
Let me think.
Okay, Anna, do you have one?
Yeah, I got one. So in the third stanza in the English translation,
Yes.
I really love, it's kind of in the middle of the stanza, birds exhausted by artifice turn away to their sad perches. Those two lines I just love because it really calls attention to the artifice of sort of poetry in general, sort of this like, oh, nature's so beautiful, is the kind of romantic idea of looking to nature to find like tranquility or to find something.
Turn away too.
Exactly. So that's the other really cool thing about this is that, so it's the artifice of looking to nature and also the artifice of sort of grammar.
They turn away too, meaning they
Yeah.
turn away from the artifice to, and then the perches are sad. Yuska, do you have a passage or a line you want us to look at?
So I think that these 35 to 36 line.
What's the stanza? How does the stanza
The
start?
fifth stanza, man dreaming on
Got
the
it.
bridge.
Man dreaming on a bridge.
Will the day ever come when this muscle stream will flow into the sea with a thunderclap, spilling out where the horizon joins the sky? When the bridge will drift out to sea and become a blue figure alive with motion? When it will be possible to cry out in a natural voice? So, after the disaster of the 2011 in our, country, I really, stick out to this, when the bridge will drift out to sea. So perhaps this is made of tsunami, and the bridge itself is, thrown out into the sea. So this very radical and strong image is why inserted into this stanza. So this is my question.
Wow. And it puts you in mind of the tsunami of a few years ago, you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's an apocalyptic image,
Yeah.
which in his mind, although he doesn't mention going off to the war, we know that in his biography he's going to fight in the Pacific, and that is a kind of tsunami in itself. Yeah. Great. Okay, time for final thoughts. One last thing, that you came here from the other side of Philadelphia or from the other side of the world. You came here to say but didn't have a chance to say yet. And I'll do one too. Anna, you want to start? Do you have a final thought?
I just think that this poem merits so much reading and rereading that to me every time I come back to it, I sort of land upon some new image. I mean, like when Yosuke just read that one for us, I guess I somehow hadn't even realized that the bridge itself is not even stable. The bridge can drift out to sea, just like the man is feeling like he might be adrift or uncertain about sort of the future. So, I mean, coming back to the line that I brought us to a minute ago with that artifice, we have nature is exhausting and artificial, right? Nature's a construct. We have bridges that are literally artificial that don't give you any kind of stability either. So this poor guy is just trying to come to some kind of maybe inner peace or something about his fate. Doesn't really have anything to hold on to, except at the very end. And again, this is something that really brilliant thought that Yosuke had moments ago, is at least you have feeling, right? At least you have your human body that tells you that you're cold. And that's, at least you have that.
Right. Great. Thank you for that. Yosuke, do you have a final thought?
So one thing that I want to edit is that the original, the form of the poem is very much translated, like somewhat the translation, very much alike the some poem like the translation from English. There are the many English poems translated into Japanese. Right. So this sort of form, translated form of the is used.
Are you saying that, I want to understand this, are you saying that the original poem was written in a form that makes it more available for translation?
No. Okay. I mean that the translated American poem into Japanese is somewhat very artificial language.
Okay.
For example, we don't use you.
Like the second person?
Yeah.
And this one does. This poem does.
So, and this is original. It is also anata, you. Like
so he used a kind of language that was not typical,
but the Japanese people, but the using you as instead of me is some sort of the American poetry.
So a Japanese reader, without knowing anything about American modernism or his interest in Eliot, could already from the language get a sense that it had an American influence.
Yes, some sort of the American
That's
influence.
so interesting.
I'm so glad. Wow, you waited till the end to tell us that. Is there something else, some other magic pill that you've got that can help us? Is there some other point that you want to make that you didn't have a chance? That was fantastic.
So amazing.
Yeah, that's
wow.
One
So
thing,
he really was thinking hard about the American influence.
Yes,
here.
yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, I will do my final word, and if you think of another one, you can.
Sure.
Okay. I just want to pick up this point about the end of beauty. This is a beautiful poem about the end of beauty. Mm-hmm. It strikes me that it's very hard to extinguish the human imagination. And I think the Erechi poets, although half of them died in the war, they sort of prove that it's very hard to keep them down, very hard to keep. They're not going to become happy. It's not that they come back up, but that they survive or they fail to die. And there's no end of beauty. It's an irony. That's a paradox. That's more Wallace Stevens than T.S. Eliot. That paradox that that you can write about the end of beauty all you want, but there it is itself. Sort of like in Stevens, you have the palm at the end of the mind. And when you finally get to the end of the mind, which presumably is the end of imagination, there's a palm. P-A-L-M, like yes. Palm tree. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, we're not at the end of the mind. There's a palm tree. It's a poem, And he has that in him, it seems to me. In this book.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's the sense of cold, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The sense of cold is, I'm alive. I'm cold, but I'm alive.
Shivering.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good point.
Yeah.
Well, the book that you can buy is America and Other Poems, Ayukawa Nobuo. And I guess I want to say, by way of thanking you in particular for joining us, what a nice thing for ModPo, which is very, very American, to have this conversation about a major poet virtually unknown in the United States. Maybe as thousands of people who are in ModPo now and in the future will see this video, they will maybe buy this book and read Ayukawa.
Yeah, this is a very good book. Yeah, I really recommend Ayukawa to the American readers. Yes.
And you like the translations pretty well.
Pretty well.
Yeah, good.
Well, although I have some,
Well, you were a great translator yourself.
Yeah.
Yosuke Tanaka, thank you so much for coming.
It's my great pleasure to be here.
Yeah. We are really happy
so much.
to have you here. And Anna Strong-Safford, as always.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you.